And for our reading this evening, we're continuing in the book of Daniel, and we come to Daniel chapter 7, the Ancient of Days, and the one like a son of man. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and the visions passed through his mind as he was lying in bed. He wrote down the substance of his dream. Daniel said, "In my vision at night I looked, and there before me were the four winds of heaven churning up the great sea. Four great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion. It had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, 'Get up and eat your fill of flesh.' After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. As I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow, the hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. I approached one of those standing there and asked him the meaning of all of this. So he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings that will rise from the earth, but the holy people of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever, yes, forever and ever. Then I wanted to know the meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others and most terrifying, with its iron teeth and bronze claws, the beast that crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head and about the other horn that came up, before which 3 of them fell, the horn that looked more imposing than the others and had eyes and a mouth that spoke boastfully. As I watched, this horn was waging war against the holy people and defeating them, until the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people of the Most High, and the time came when they possessed the kingdom. He gave me this explanation. The 4th beast is a 4th kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will come from this kingdom, and after them another king will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and the laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time. But the court will sit, and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. And then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. This is the end of the matter. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled by my thoughts, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter to myself. We come on now in the book of Daniel to a series of visions which Daniel himself had. Last week we looked at Daniel in the lion's den and said this is one of the best known stories in the Old Testament, perhaps alongside the story of Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego in the blazing furnace. But tonight I want to say that Daniel chapter 7 is actually more important and more exciting than any of those other stories. In this first of a series of dreams, visions, which Daniel himself experienced, we're back at the beginning of Belshazzar's reign as king of the Babylonian Empire. In many ways, this dream echoes the dream which King Nebuchadnezzar had, which we read about in Daniel chapter 2. Daniel's dream reveals 4 beasts, one like a lion, another like a bear, third like a leopard, and a fourth which was even more frightening and didn't resemble any animal at all. This is apocalyptic language. It reveals the truth in pictures and symbols, so we shouldn't read too much into the details of it. We shouldn't read it necessarily, particularly literally. And mercifully for us, God revealed to Daniel the meaning of his dream. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings that will rise from the earth. Conservative interpreters who date the book of Daniel back in the 6th century BC, like I do, generally understand the beasts to refer to the Babylonian Empire, then the Medo-Persian Empire, then the Greek Empire, then the Roman Empire. Empires so brutal, they're represented as animals rather than people. And the dream foretells how these empires will oppose and oppress God's chosen people. As I watched, this horn was waging war against the holy people and defeating them. God's warning Daniel and all the Jews that there would be many painful times ahead, times of persecution and suffering. The 10 horns, the 10 kings who will come from this kingdom, and after them, another king will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people, try to change the set times and laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time. There will be times of fierce persecution, terrible suffering. But that wouldn't be the end of the story, because in Daniel's dream and its interpretation, there are wonderful promises for the people of God to cling on to. Verse 18, the people of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever. Yes, forever and ever. The marvelous, happy certainty that whatever might unfold in the centuries which were to come, God's holy people would ultimately receive an eternal kingdom which would endure forever and ever. Verse 21. As I watched, this horn was waging war against God's holy people and defeating them until the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people of the Most High. And the time came when they possessed the kingdom. A wonderful promise in the dream that the day was going to come when God would vindicate his holy people and they would possess an eternal kingdom. Verse 26, the court will sit and that king's power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. And then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. There's the promise God is making to his holy people through Daniel's dream, promise of an everlasting kingdom where all the world will worship and obey the Most High God. That kingdom is waiting for God's people. In the dream, the eternal God is named as the Ancient of Days. I looked, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as wool, white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. What an amazing vision of the Almighty and eternal God, perfect in holiness, white as snow, white as wool, yet burning with glory, flaming with fire, all ablaze, with a river of fire flowing from him, with millions of angels serving him, hundreds of millions of people standing before him. Sometimes we can forget how glorious and majestic Almighty God really is. Oh, worship the King, oh, glorious above. Oh, gratefully sing his wonderful love, our shield and defender, the Ancient of Days, pavilioned in splendor, girded with praise. Immortal, invisible, God only wise, in light inaccessible hid from our eyes, most blessed, most glorious, Ancient of Days, Almighty, victorious, your great name we praise. The Ancient of Days will bring salvation for his chosen people. The court was seated, the books were opened. Verse 11, then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The Almighty and eternal God, the Ancient of Days, will bring salvation for his people. But Daniel's dream tells us that that salvation will come not from the Ancient of Days himself, but through another person, through his agent, through one like a son of man. Verse 13, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence, and he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away. His kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. It's this one like a son of man who will bring the salvation to God's chosen people. This son of man given authority, glory, and sovereign power, so that all nations and peoples will worship him. It's this Son of Man who will be given the eternal dominion which will never pass away. The Ancient of Days will give to this Son of Man the kingdom which will never be destroyed, which God's chosen people will inherit. And now you can see why I say that this chapter is more exciting than any other passage in the book of Daniel, indeed most of the Old Testament, because it is pointing us directly to the Lord Jesus Christ, the Messiah, who called himself the Son of Man. We thought before about the name which Jesus used for himself 82 times in the Gospels. The name Jesus used most often for himself, the Son of Man. Instead of saying I, Jesus would often refer to himself in the third person, saying the Son of Man. The phrase, the Son of Man, was not a title in use in first century Palestine, so everybody would know what Jesus meant by saying the Son of Man. It didn't refer to any person specifically in the Old Testament, and Jews would not immediately have made this link to Daniel chapter 7. If the Son of Man meant anything in Jesus' time, it would have just have meant a human being, or maybe a man like me. When Jesus called himself the Son of Man, the title didn't have a whole bundle of ideas associated with it. So it meant what Jesus meant it to mean. Jesus didn't announce himself as the Messiah. In the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus generally didn't call himself the Son of God, not even the Son, but rather the Son of Man. In John's Gospel, Jesus talked about himself as the Son, but even there he also did call himself the Son of Man, sometimes. There are different threads we can pick out from the way that Jesus used the title, the Son of Man. In many of his sayings, the Son of Man was one who shared in our human experiences. The phrase in the Old Testament, as we say, usually meant a human being, but particularly would emphasize the mortality of human beings and the smallness of humanity in comparison to the Almighty and eternal God. So when he called himself the Son of Man, Jesus was emphasizing his complete humanity and his solidarity with all human beings, especially with the poor, the oppressed, the marginalized. And one aspect of human condition which Jesus was identifying with was human suffering. As the Son of Man, Jesus suffered as a human being. Time and time again, he foretold that the Son of Man would go to Jerusalem, be rejected and crucified by sinful men. The Son of Man, a typical human being, suffering human being, but at the same time, there were some sayings where it's clear that the Son of Man had a unique authority. When he healed that paralyzed man lowered down in through the roof, Jesus said that that miracle was proof that the Son of Man has authority to forgive sins. When Jesus was challenged for healing on the Sabbath, he replied, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. The Son of Man has unique authority. At the same time as confirming his humanity, Jesus was revealing that the Son of Man has a glorious destiny. In explaining the parable of the weeds in the field in Matthew 13, Jesus says this, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man, the one who brings salvation. The field is the world, the good seed stands for sons of the kingdom, the weeds are sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest, the end of the age, the harvesters are angels, and as the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. The Son of Man sowing the seeds of salvation, the Son of Man responsible for sending out the angels on the day of judgment. Jesus says the same in Matthew 16, what good will it be for a man if he gains the whole world yet forfeits his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what he's done. The Son of Man bringing judgment. Again, in Matthew 19, I tell you the truth, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So the Son of Man has a glorious destiny, and that brings us to these prophecies in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel 7 and verse 13. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a Son of Man, coming with all the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away. His kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Here in Daniel 7, we see God giving authority over all things, an everlasting dominion, an indestructible kingdom to this one like a Son of Man. And Jesus is claiming that figure as himself when he teaches in Jerusalem about the last days. He says there will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. Men will faint from terror, apprehensive of what's coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. And at that time, they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Jesus will be that Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. and at the end of his life, on trial before the high priest, Jesus reveals that he is indeed the one like a son of man, foretold by Daniel. The high priest said to Jesus, I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. You have said so, said Jesus. But I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. That's the glorious destiny of one like a son of man. Jesus claims it as his own destiny, as he declares before the high priest that he is indeed the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. When he admits that he is the Son of Man from Daniel, with hindsight, with the eye of faith, we might see that claim very often when Jesus refers himself to the Son of Man. Completely human, yet with great authority. The Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God, whose destiny is to sit at the right hand of God and one day to come again in the glory on the clouds of heaven. Here is Jesus, the Son of Man. As the Son of Man, he shared all our human experiences. He shared in the suffering of the marginalized and the oppressed. He brought unique authority, and he has a glorious destiny, fulfilling Daniel chapter 7. In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He, the Son of Man, was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Bow down and worship, for this is your God. Let's take a moment to reflect on the greatness of the Son of Man, our Lord Jesus Christ.